the time the first vineyards were put in here, I was a journalist for the Stock Journal, which is a farming newspaper. And it's fair to say that the people that I was writing for thought they were crazy when they started planting vines in this part of the world. It had been very good cattle and sheep country, and also very good horse breeding country. And there was a lot of scepticism.
And there's great dangers in being a pioneer, economic and you know, it's a lot of hard work, and you don't have the backup of neighbours to assist you. You particularly in the wine industry, if you're developing a brand, it's very hard to come from nowhere. Although we did pretty well, because I think Decanter magazine voted us one of the 10 hot wineries in the world, I think, when we first got going, which was quite a bit of a coup. There was one other established vineyard, the Wheel family had put a little vineyard in. It was growing pretty well. But also, it's a bit of a joke, but I used to be a livestock buyer, and you'd buy red lambs at Coonawarra and red lambs over here. So obviously the soil types were of some similarity.
As young kids, I could always remember Dad, every time we came down here, we'd drive from Kingston through to Robe, and Dad would always say, this has got some of the best Terra Rossa soil around in plots as there are over in Coonawarra. And that was one of the major things that always stayed in the back of my brain, and certainly when I got into the wine industry. We ended up paying $430 an acre here, which included all the improvements. So the basic land price was only about $250. We went in initially with Chardonnay because obviously that was the earliest one we could get into production. And then Cabernet, I remember the first time we put the Cabernet in, went into I'm not sure if the Coonawarra Wine Show in those days was called Limestone Coast or just Coonawarra, but we ended up becoming a bit of a talking point there. So this would have been 95, I think, because the Black Wattle Cabernet walked away with a VHC, which is the equivalent of a gold medal.
Mount Benson's a little bit of an enigma in that it has a reputation for growing good crops, but it is hard country. I mean, you look at the trees, you look at the scrub. I read a wonderful quote from one of James Halliday's original books where he described Mount Benson as wind-blown, barren, and why would anyone want to go and plant grapes there? And my answer to that was, why wouldn't I? Wow, here's an opportunity to get away from a high vigour site where we can pick little niche areas and grow some really premium grapes naturally, so we don't have to physically retard them.
It's interesting that the pines in Mount Benson region, they are some of the slowest growing in Australia, and by slow growing it means there's particularly high quality wood. And it's really interesting that the same can be extrapolated out of wine quality. We actually had a board meeting down here about the time we actually started developing the vineyard, and as he drove in, the chairman basically said, "What the f*** are we doing here?" But you know, it was interesting. Only 2 years later, after that sort of infamous comment, the vineyard in 1 year produced 707 Grange and Yattarna. This was planted as a Penfolds vineyard. So right from the word go, it was actually associated with the Penfolds products. It's been interesting over the time, but it's basically pretty well a backbone of Saint Henri now, and has produced some exceptional Cabernets, 407, 707, and it's producing really good Pinot as well. So it is specifically targeted at the Penfolds portfolio. You've got this really fine wines being sold throughout the world at significant prices, and the Robe is credited on those labels for producing that style of wine.
We followed basically what Penfolds were doing, and we got some funny early comments. We said, oh well, we'll establish a 100-acre vineyard, and they said, wait, hang on a minute, 100 acres is a pretty big vineyard. Why don't you just do 20 or 30? He said, you broadacre farmers don't understand this grape business. Mind you, we did understand it a little bit better when semi-trailer loads of posts arrived instead of 4 or 5, and 130 kilometres of drip tube, and all this sort of stuff started to bring it home to us.
We were involved with Quinn and Watson's Waterhouse range originally, and selected a site, a really good site on the eastern side of Wokwine, and started from there. It's just the perfect drainage back in off the hillside, and it was we only ever had one frost in all the time that we had the vineyard, so beautiful site, great water, great location.
My ancestors came down here in the 1880s and set up stores and ventured into land, so we've been here ever since. And just recently we've ventured into viticulture back in about year 2000. In our own particular vineyard, it's not the reds that are the really good doers, it's the simple ones of the white varieties, the Semillons, the Pinot Gris and the Sauvignon Blanc.
I would like to see a lot of more white varieties. Everybody who ever talks to me knows that I'm a bit of a white variety freak, and I'm fine with it, and I will always say that Mount Benson is good for aromatic whites.
We know what Black Wattle has done here. We know what some of the other producers have done around here. I think it's still in the making, and I think there's this great adage in the wine industry, anywhere you go in the world, is that the older your vines get, the better your fruit quality is actually going to be, provided they're looked after properly.
The quality of the wines are good. I think that's the underpinning thing here. We can make good wine, and we are making good wines, and they're interesting wines and different. They have their own personality.
Vine age has made a massive difference. I think, like any young vineyard, you get a bit of variation in those first probably 10 to 12 years. Now we're sort of hitting 20 years on average for all the material we're bringing in from here, and also from other vineyards in the Limestone Coast we've been working with for a long time. We're seeing good consistency and I guess, pretty solid wines.